My sister is the biggest bully to my nephew, who is a special kid, and when I stood up for him, she said, "What would a college dropout like you know?" I sent a video to her late husband's parents, and now she has lost everything, and parents won't stop blowing up my phone. I, 37 female, have an older sister, Natalie, 39 female. Growing up with Natalie was really tough. She wasn't just mean to me at school. She was like that at home too. One of the things that hurt me the most was the name she called me. It felt like she knew exactly what would make me feel bad, and she would pick on that. Sometimes it was about how I looked. Other times it was about my grades or the things I liked to do. No matter what, she always found something to make fun of. I remember one time in particular. She called me Four Eyes because I wear glasses. It made me feel awful about myself, like I could never be good enough. My sister Natalie wasn't content with just hurting my feelings. She seemed determined to make me an outcast. She would spread rumors about me at school, telling people I was weird or mean, basically making sure people wouldn't want to be my friend. It worked. I felt so alone, and it made me scared to trust anyone. I always worried they would turn on me too. The bullying didn't stop with words. Natalie liked to use her size and strength against me too. She would shove me around or get in my way to make me feel small and scared. It seemed like she just wanted to show she was in charge. But the worst part was how she played mind games. If anything went wrong, Natalie would find a way to make it my fault. I remember she broke Mom's favorite vase and convinced everyone I did it. I started to doubt myself, feeling like maybe I was really the problem. Sometimes, Natalie would even threaten to hurt me if I didn't do what she wanted. That was terrifying. I lived in constant fear, never knowing if she was serious or not. But it was enough to make me do whatever she said. Natalie did everything she could do to make me feel worthless. She would make fun of my grades or laugh at my dreams for the future. It seemed like she wanted me to believe I would never be good enough. Worst of all, she controlled every part of my life. She would tell me what to wear, who to hang out with, everything. She would spin things around it so it seemed like it was my idea, but I always knew she was pulling the strings. It made me feel like I wasn't even a real person, just a puppet for her to control. Honestly, Natalie's bullying was awful in so many ways. It hurt my feelings, messed with my head, and made me feel trapped. The only times I felt a bit better were during those years she was away at college. At least then I had some space and peace at home. College was such a letdown. It wasn't what I thought it would be. The classes were dull, and I hated wasting time and money on something that didn't even interest me. So halfway through my second year, I made a big decision. I dropped out. It felt weird admitting that college wasn't the right path for me, especially since everyone always talks about how important it is. After that, I felt lost for a while. I needed time to figure out what I wanted to do. There were so many different jobs out there. It was overwhelming. But then I found carpentry, and it was like everything fell into place. I loved the idea of working with my hands and building things. It felt way more satisfying than sitting in a classroom. Starting out in carpentry wasn't easy. As one of the few women in the field, I got some serious side-eye. People would doubt I could do the work just because I'm a girl. That was really frustrating, and it made me feel like I had something to prove. So I pushed myself way harder, just to show everyone that I was just as good, if not better, than any of the guys. While I was figuring out my carpentry path, my sister Natalie was on a totally different track. She graduated college with all the honors and got a job teaching at the local community college. I was definitely proud of her, but there was always this weird tension between us. She just couldn't understand why I dropped out or why I wanted to work with my hands instead of following her path. Natalie couldn't let go of the fact that I dropped out of college. She would make these little digs about it, questioning my smarts and acting like I was some kind of failure. She had always put education on this pedestal, like it was the only thing that mattered. The way she saw it, I'd thrown my future away. It hurt, and it made me feel like I'd never be good enough for her. Even though I was doing well in carpentry, Natalie never really acknowledged it. It was like a college degree was the only thing that counted. I tried so many times to explain that there's more than one way to be successful. I was happy and passionate about my work, but she just couldn't understand why I didn't take the path she did. Our relationship got really tense. She would compare everything I did to her own life, always putting me down. It was so frustrating and hurtful. I mean, she's my sister. Shouldn't she be happy for me and support my choices, even if they were different from hers? Natalie might not like my choices, but I wasn't about to let her control my life. I was proud of what I'd built in carpentry. I was proud of showing that women can rock this job and that I didn't need some fancy degree to make it happen. I didn't need her to tell me I was doing a good job. Anyway, life goes on. We both got married and started families. Natalie has a son, Alex, 10 male. He's a sweet kid, but there's something a little different about him. He needs extra help with everyday things. The doctors say his motor skills are not great. They think he'll improve over time and be able to do stuff on his own eventually though. Honestly, watching Natalie with Alex broke my heart. She wasn't nice to him. She didn't support him or try to make things easier. Instead, she called him stupid and yelled at him. It hurt so much to hear her talk to him like that. What was even worse was that she made things extra hard for him, saying she was trying to teach him how to do things properly. It was like she didn't even see how much he was already struggling and just kept piling on the pressure. He was such a sweet, sensitive boy, and her words and actions just broke him down. It was awful seeing him struggling, knowing it was partly because of how his own mother treated him. As his aunt, I felt like it was my job to protect him, to make sure he got the love and support he needed, but stepping in to help Alex was hard. I wanted to scream at Natalie, to tell her how much she was hurting him, but I was terrified that would just make things worse for him. What if she got angry at me and took it out on Alex later? It was a horrible situation to be in, and honestly, most of the time I felt totally helpless. Natalie wasn't just mean with her words. She messed with him in other ways too. For example, if Alex was struggling to get dressed, instead of helping him or showing him patiently, she yelled at him for being slow, then snatched the clothes away and said something like, "Fine, if you can't do it, I guess you'll just stay in your pajamas all day." Then she left him standing there, feeling awful. There were times when I stepped in to help, but she always made it seem like I was spoiling him or something. It was so frustrating because I could see what she was doing to him, but I didn't know how to stop it. I couldn't just sit back and watch Alex suffer anymore. I tried hinting to Natalie that maybe she needed to be a little gentler with him, but she just brushed me off. She was so stubborn, and it was like she didn't even see how her words and actions hurt him. As his aunt, I felt like I had to protect him. He deserved love and support, and it broke my heart to see how she treated him. It was a tough spot to be in though. I could do something, try to make a difference, but I didn't want to totally destroy my relationship with my sister or make things even harder for Alex. Things took a terrible turn when Natalie's husband Tom was killed in a car crash. It was so sudden, so awful, and the whole family was devastated. Natalie was crushed, of course. She'd lost her husband, the love of her life, but also the person she shared all her parenting struggles with. After Tom died, I could see Natalie sinking. She was so lost and lonely. Their whole house felt different, so sad and empty without him. It used to be kind of loud and chaotic, but now it was just quiet all the time. On top of the emotional pain, losing Tom hit Natalie hard financially too. She ended up losing the house because she couldn't keep up with the mortgage. It seemed so unfair. First, she lost her husband, and now the fear of being homeless with Alex was hanging over her head. It was all too much, and honestly, I was worried about what she might do. Seeing Natalie and Alex on the brink like that, I knew I had to do something. They had nowhere to go, no one to turn to. So even though things between us had always been complicated, I invited them to come live with me. It wasn't an easy decision. I knew it would be hard, but I couldn't stand the thought of my sister and nephew suffering alone. I wanted them to have a safe place, a place where they could start to heal. Once Natalie and Alex moved in with me, I started seeing just how bad things really were. It wasn't just that she was a little mean sometimes. It was a constant emotional abuse and neglect. Her punishments for Alex were awful, way beyond what's fair even for a kid without his challenges. The worst part was that she would use basic things he needed, like food, as punishment. If Alex made the tiniest mistake, Natalie would refuse to feed him. It was horrifying, seeing an innocent kid going hungry because that's how his own mom decided to discipline him. It wasn't just once either. She would do this all the time, leaving Alex confused and scared along with being hungry. Another punishment Natalie loved was making Alex stand outside the house for hours. It didn't matter what the weather was like. Rain, blistering heat, whatever. She just locked him out. It was so humiliating for him and broke my heart to see him standing there all alone. It was clear she enjoyed seeing him suffer and didn't care at all about how messed up it was. But the worst part was the screaming. There was always screaming. She was always looking for an excuse to explode at Alex. If he spilled a drink, forgot his homework, or anything at all, she would launch into this tirade of yelling, insults, and threats. It was awful to listen to, hearing her tear into him for every little thing. Seeing it happen every day, seeing her crush his spirit little by little, was destroying me. As his aunt, I couldn't just let this happen to Alex. Seeing how she treated him tore me up inside. I tried to talk to Natalie and tried to make her see how much she was hurting him, but she wouldn't listen. She would just brush me off, say I didn't understand, that she knew how to parent her son and I should butt out. It was so frustrating, feeling like I couldn't do anything to really protect him from his own mother. And all the while, I could see the damage it was doing. That sweet, happy little kid I remembered was disappearing. He was turning into this sad, scared, broken version of himself. Seeing that change, knowing his own mom was causing it, was just about the worst feeling in the world. But even though getting through Natalie was impossible, I wouldn't give up on Alex. I kept speaking up for him, even when she would yell at me for it. It felt like nothing would ever change. Like, no matter what I said, she would keep hurting him. It was like all my words just bounced off her. But even so, I couldn't turn my back on him. I had to keep trying, hoping that maybe one day I would say the right thing and she would finally listen. Finally, one day I just snapped. Natalie was screaming at Alex worse than ever, and I couldn't take it anymore. I stepped in and yelled at her to stop, to leave him alone for just a minute. I explained to her, I begged her, that all this punishment wasn't doing anything but making things worse for Alex. I told her he needed some understanding, some kindness, a chance to learn at his own pace, but she wouldn't even listen. That's when she turned on me. She started going on about how a college dropout like me wouldn't know anything about raising a kid, especially a kid like Alex. It hurt so much to hear her say that, especially since I was trying my best to help. It brought back all those old feelings of not being good enough. But even though her words stung, I wasn't going to let her win. I wasn't going to let her keep hurting Alex. It was the least I could do for him. To get Alex away from Natalie for even a few minutes, I took him to get ice cream. I was hoping maybe a simple treat would cheer him up and give him a break from all the yelling and stress at home. While we ate, I couldn't stop thinking that I had to do something, some way of protecting him from all this. That's when the idea hit me. I had to document the abuse and get proof of what Natalie was doing to Alex. It wasn't an easy decision. It felt risky and wrong in a way, doing this to my own sister, but I just couldn't bear the thought of letting this go on any longer. I needed to take action, get Alex the real help he needed, even if it meant turning against my own family. I didn't know exactly what I would do with the evidence yet, or who I would even show it to, but I knew it was the first step, and it was the only way that I could protect Alex from all that hurt. The absolute worst thing Natalie did was force Alex to stand outside the house for hours as punishment. No matter the weather, no matter the reason, the tiniest mistake could get him sent outside. It was unbelievably cruel, especially for a kid like Alex, who had a hard time even in the best of circumstances. I couldn't stand to watch it happen anymore. Luckily, I have a security camera on my house that faces the yard. I started using it to record what was happening with Alex. It was awful to do, knowing I was secretly filming my sister being abusive. But I have to have proof to show someone else what was really happening to him. Once I had enough footage, I knew who could help. Alex's grandparents. and Natalie's parents. I sent them the recordings along with a long message explaining everything, how Natalie treated Alex, and how I was scared for him. The next few days were awful. After I emailed the videos of Natalie to her parents, it was a total wreck waiting to hear back from them. Every time my phone rang, I jumped. What if they didn't believe me? What if they thought I was just jealous of Nat or stirring up trouble and didn't take it seriously? The more I thought about it, the more I started to worry. Days went by without any word from them, and I began to lose hope. I couldn't stop thinking about poor Alex and how things must still be awful for him there. Had I made everything worse? Would this backfire and somehow put Alex in more danger? The guilt and doubt were eating away at me, and all I could do was wait and worry. It was one of the longest stretches of time in my life. Just when I thought I couldn't take it anymore, the doorbell rang. My heart pounded as I ran to the door, praying it was Alex's grandparents, and it was. I've never been so happy to see them. It was such a relief when they told me they were taking Alex home with them. Finally, hearing them say that out loud made it feel real, like I'd done the right thing, and now Alex would finally be safe. The next few minutes were a whirlwind. Natalie came rushing out, demanding to know what was going on. She couldn't believe her in-laws were siding with me over her, and she started yelling at them that they had no right to do this. She was a good mom, blah blah blah. It was all lies, of course, but her parents weren't buying it. Alex's grandmother stood up for her, firm but calm, and told Natalie they were taking Alex for his own good. Of course, Natalie tried to defend herself. She started yelling that the videos didn't show everything and that I twisted things to make her look bad, but the look on her parents' faces told me they weren't buying it. The truth was too clear for her to hide now. As they led Alex away from the house, I felt a mix of emotions. I was so relieved he was finally getting away from Natalie, but also so heartbroken over everything that had happened and what he'd been through. The important thing was that Alex finally had a chance to live in a safe, loving environment. His grandparents were good people, and they would do everything they could to help him heal from his past. It wasn't going to be easy, and I knew there would be challenges along the way. But at least now he had a real shot at being happy. That's the thought that carried me through everything that happened next, as hard as things were at times. Natalie's voice cut through the air as she turned to me, tears streaming down her face. "You did this," she sobbed. "You're the reason I'm losing my son." The anger and betrayal were clear in her voice, and at that moment, I knew our relationship was forever broken. A flicker of guilt ran through me, but I stood my ground, meeting her gaze steadily. "Yes," I said, my voice barely a whisper. "I did that, but his grandparents needed to know the truth about what was happening here." It was hard saying the words out loud, admitting my part in all this, as Natalie stormed out of the house, slamming the door behind her. A wave of sadness washed over me. Had I done the right thing? My mind raced, questioning if I should have handled this differently, or somehow kept it all within the family. But I knew in my heart that I couldn't have lived with myself if I let Alex go on suffering. He deserved better. The guilt might fade over time, but protecting Alex was the only option I had. It didn't take long for everything to start exploding in my face. My phone wouldn't stop ringing. It was my parents. They were furious with me. "How could you do this to your own sister?" they yelled. "You've ruined her life." I tried to explain, tried to make them see the videos, and understand that Alex was in danger. But they wouldn't even listen. To them, Natalie could do no wrong, and I was the bad guy for interfering with her family. "You don't get it," they snapped. "This isn't some black and white situation. You could have talked to her first and tried to help, instead of stabbing her in the back like this." Their words cut deep. They thought I'd betrayed my own family, and no matter how much I explained, they simply refused to see my side of things. It seemed impossible to bridge the gap between us, and I couldn't help but feel like maybe I'd made a horrible mistake. Their accusations hit me hard. It brought back all the guilt and doubts that I've been wrestling with already. Maybe I shouldn't have sent the videos. Maybe I could have done things differently and tried to work it out within the family. But the more I thought about it, the more I realized that was impossible. I tried talking to Natalie over and over again. Every time I did, she brushed me off and told me to mind my own business. In the end, she wouldn't listen, no matter how gently I tried to approach it. I knew I had to do whatever it took to keep Alex safe, even if it meant turning against my own family. So even though it felt awful, I stopped answering my parents' calls. I needed a break from the yelling and the blame. It was so lonely, being cut off from my family, knowing they all hated me, but I held on to the thought that it was the right thing to do, even if it meant being the outcast. All that mattered was keeping Alex safe. But when they still didn't listen to me, I hung up the phone, and since then, they have been blowing it up. I don't know what to do now. Any suggestions, guys? I think I did the right thing, but I'm not sure anymore. A few weeks later after I made that post, I got a call from Alex's grandmother, Beth. Just hearing her voice on the other end of the line was a shock. I hadn't spoken to her since Alex moved out, and I could tell from the tone in her voice that this was serious. She invited me over, and I could feel a mix of nervousness and excitement. When I got there, Alex came running over and hugged me. It was so good to see him again. We talked and played for a while, but then Beth pulled me aside to talk about some serious stuff. She told me how much it meant to Alex that I had stepped up and helped him, but she also admitted that they were really struggling to take care of him. She said they loved him so much, but they were older, and he needed more attention and help that they could manage. Caring for him 24/7 was completely exhausting for them, and they were worried that they might not be able to do it much longer. And then, they asked the question I never expected. Would I consider taking Alex to live in with me? I was stunned. I mean, it wasn't something I'd even thought about. Was that even possible, legally? A million thoughts raced through my head. Could I handle the responsibility of caring for him full time? Was I even equipped to do this? To give Alex everything he needed? What would Natalie do if she found out? The weight of the request hung heavy on my shoulders. I love Alex so much, and more than anything, I wanted him to have a safe, happy home. But I also knew how hard it would be, both for him and me. Beth told me to take some time and think it over. She said that they loved me and Alex, and wouldn't ask it if they didn't think it was at least worth considering. I felt torn between wanting to give Alex a home and the fear that I might not be able to do enough for him. Could I give him what he needed? Was I even the right person for this? Things went from complicated to a whole new level of crazy just a day after Beth asked me to take in Alex. Natalie stormed into my house, screaming about how I was trying to steal Alex. She was furious, yelling, and accusing me of being evil for trying to break up her family. I tried to explain that I hadn't made up my mind yet, that Alex's grandparents had just asked me to consider it, but she wouldn't listen. She started threatening to call the police to get Alex back, and that's when I started to get scared. I wasn't sure what my legal rights were at this point, or if she might actually be able to make trouble for me. I couldn't even think straight, with all the yelling and threats going on. Finally, I couldn't take it anymore. I told her that I had packed up all her stuff and she needed to leave. It felt awful, but I knew I couldn't let her stay here any longer. Watching her go made it clear that our relationship was completely destroyed, and it broke my heart to think of everything we'd been through together. But protecting Alex was all that mattered. Just when I thought things were finally settling down after Natalie left, I got a call from Beth. She was practically hysterical, saying Natalie had just gone totally nuts over there, and now they weren't sure what to do next. I rushed over, trying to figure out what fresh nightmare was unfolding. Turns out, they'd agreed to let Natalie visit Alex, hoping it would be good for both of them. But it went terribly wrong. Apparently, as soon as Alex mentioned that he wanted to live with Aunt Ashley, Natalie lost it. She started screaming at everyone around, blaming me for trying to steal her son, saying she shouldn't have even agreed to let Alex visit with them in the first place. Things escalated quickly, with Natalie lashing out and refusing to leave. Finally, Beth and her husband threatened to call the police to escort her off the property. It was a complete disaster, and poor Alex was so shaken up. The more I saw how Natalie treated him, the more determined I became to make sure he had a safe, loving home with me. Okay, I know everyone's been waiting for an update for a month, and there's been a lot going on, but honestly, I needed some time to process everything before I was ready to talk about it. I'm still not sure I've got my head wrapped around it all, but here's an update on where things stand right now. The biggest question right now is, did I end up taking Alex in? The answer is no. It was the hardest decision of my life, but after a lot of soul searching, I realized I couldn't do it. I want so badly to help him, to give him a place where he feels safe and happy, but the truth is, I was terrified. Taking care of a child with Alex's needs is such a huge responsibility, and I don't know if I'm equipped to handle it. I had to put my own mental and emotional well-being first, as hard as that was. Even though I couldn't take Alex in, I'm still very much involved in his life. A couple of days ago, Beth called me again. To my surprise, she apologized for asking me to take Alex. She said they realized it was a lot to expect of me, especially given everything else going on. Instead, she asked if I would consider being Alex's godmother. I was so honored, and of course, I immediately said yes. It means so much to know that Alex's grandparents trust me enough to ask, and I was deeply touched that they still want me to be a major part of his life. As his godmother, I'm going to be there for Alex every step of the way. I want to be someone he can count on, who gives him all the love and support he needs to grow and thrive. But helping Beth and her husband means more than being Alex's godmother. I've made it clear that they can call on me anytime they need a hand. Whether it's babysitting, giving them a break so they can go on a date night, whatever. I'm here to help. Taking care of Alex is exhausting, and they deserve some time to rest and recharge too. And that brings me back to Natalie. When she threatened to call the cops and get Alex back, I'll admit, I panicked a little, but then I got angry. I wasn't about to let her tear apart our family any more than she already had. So I told her straight to her face that if she went through with it, I would testify against her. I would tell the court everything I'd seen and heard about how she treats Alex. It was risky, but I had to protect him, whatever the cost. Thankfully, it was enough to get her to back down, at least for now. After a lot of arguing and back and forth, we came to a very cautious agreement. She gets visits with Alex on weekends. It's not the best outcome, but it's something. At least for now, Alex is safe with his grandparents, and I can at least make sure he gets to see his mom, even if the situation isn't perfect. The thing with Natalie, I don't know what's going to happen there. Our relationship is shattered, and I'm not sure if it can ever be fully fixed. But somewhere deep down, I hope that maybe someday we can find a way to heal and rebuild. Maybe we'll never be close like we were when we were kids, but I want her to be part of Alex's life, and I hope that we can at least find a way to be civil around each other. But in the end, none of that matters as much as Alex. He's an amazing kid, and the most important thing is that he's happy. I'm just so grateful that he's finally safe and loved, and that I get to be a part of his life. As his godmother, I'm going to do everything I can to make sure his future is bright, and that he grows up knowing that he has a whole family who loves and supports him, no matter what. And that was a wrap up for today's story. Thank you very much for listening. Smash that like button for me, and subscribe for more stories. Thanks again, and we'll be seeing you in the next one.